All right, guys, this is the first set of notes for our dividing fractions lesson. We got to go over a couple words first. So we have reciprocal and invert. This word you might have heard before. To invert something or to switch something, you may or may not have heard this in average conversation, but today let's first focus on a reciprocal. In math, a reciprocal means the multiplicative inverse. That sounds crazy. So the multiplicative inverse is relating to the word invert, basically means it is a number being in fraction form inverted, or turned upside down. So that's the definition of a reciprocal. It's the multiplicative inverse, because the opposite of multiplication is division. And that's what fractions are. Fractions are actually representations of division. See how this kind of looks like if I change these dots and made them numbers, it would look like a fraction. So the algebraic example is if I have A over B, its reciprocal would be B over A. They're just switching. They're flipping. They're inverting. That is the reciprocal. So for an example, let's say I have 8 over 9. Its reciprocal would be 9 over 8. The same can be said about whole numbers too. So let's say I have 4. Well, a whole number as a fraction is really 4 over 1. So its reciprocal would be 1 over 4. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put a 4 in front. So you see how we got that. Make sure this matches your notes. A non-example would be something like a mixed number, and just leaving it like that, or any regular. No, I think we're just going to stick with that. That's the best non-example I can think of. Don't accidentally think that we can make a reciprocal with this, because at first we'd have to get mad. And you'll find out about this in a later lesson when we start dividing with mixed numbers. But for now, we're not worried about those. So make sure you have all of this on your notes. If you're ready, I'm going to scoot on up, or actually down on my paper, and focus on the word invert. This is the verb. This is what's happening to the fraction. To invert something means to switch or move in position, comma, usually upside down. So this is where, when you hear keep, switch, flip, that's where the flip comes in. We're inverting it. We're going usually up and down. To invert means to move things like this, not necessarily like turn to the side. Invert means from one side up and down to another side up and down. So again, following the same algebraic example, if I have A over B, I would invert it to B over A. And that is the same as the reciprocal. And then the examples and non-examples would be exactly the same as these. So you can go ahead and leave these blank for now. When you're ready, you can get to the next page. If you need to pause this, go right ahead. So we're going to jump right into the notes because it's a pretty quick lesson today. So dividing fractions. Another term for the multiplicative inverse is the reciprocal. To find the reciprocal of a number, you have to write the number as a fraction first. So kind of jumping back to my whole number example, I couldn't just leave it a whole number. I had to make it into a fraction. Then I could find its reciprocal. You got to write it in fraction form first. Then you invert the numerator and the denominator. So you flip them. Any number times its reciprocal gives me the answer 1. Let me prove this. So let's say I have the whole number 2. Well, I got to write this as a fraction first. So 2 would be 2 over 1. And if it says any number times, that's multiplying, its reciprocal. So this reciprocal would be 1 over 2. See how I flip them? And if I multiply across, 2 times 1 is 2. 1 times 2 is 2. 2 over 2 equals 1 whole. And that's a way you can check to see, did I actually find its correct reciprocal? Because if I multiply across, do I get 1 whole number? All right. Find the reciprocal of each number below. They set these up just like I did earlier. All the reciprocals when I multiply across will equal in 1. So this is how we're going to check. So 1 over 4 times 4 over 1. We'll simplify to 1. This reciprocal would be, you guessed it, 5 over 2. This reciprocal, I have to invert it, would be 9 over 8. And 7, oh, that's a whole number. I got to make it a fraction first and then flip it, 1 over 7. To divide fractions, you have to change, circle the word change. You have to change the operation to multiplication because that's what the reciprocal is. It's the multiplicative inverse. So by using this example of how timesing the reciprocal results in 1, that's why we change the operation to multiplication. Then you multiply the dividend by the reciprocal of the divisor. So we keep the first fraction the same. Underline keep. You change division to multiplication. And then you also change the second fraction to its reciprocal. Can you write underneath change the word flip? Keep, change, flip. Or keep, switch, flip, I've heard other students say in the past. Either way is fine as long as you're doing them in this order. Make sure you keep the first fraction. That is the dividend, the number we started with. That doesn't change. You flip to its reciprocal. This is the divisor. So I'm going to do one problem with you guys, and then you can get started on your group work. So I have 1/2 divided by 2/3. I'm going to leave this as is, and I'm just going to do my work. I'm going to pull this down. I'm going to keep the first fraction. I'm going to change division, that's the division sign right here, to multiplication. And then I'm going to flip 2/3 to its reciprocal. So if I invert it, that would be 3 over 2. And then I multiply across. 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 2 is 4. So if I ask the question, how many 2/3 are in a half? There are 3/4. There's my answer. So go ahead and actually, since this is fairly manageable from what I could tell you guys did yesterday with the earlier lesson, you can go ahead and move on and try this one out. I will say though, if you result in a improper fraction or a fraction greater than 1, so let's say you have like 11 over 3, I do want you to simplify it. But if you have this, that's about as simple as it can get. So once you try this problem out, turn your paper over. You're going to work on problems 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you need to get a check from Miss Madera or the guest teacher. Let's set up this problem first. Shay is making costumes for the school play. She has 14 feet of ribbon. She needs to cut pieces that are 3/5 feet long. How many pieces can she cut? Well, let's stop and think. What did she start with? Well, it says she started with 14 feet. And she needs to cut or divide up pieces that are 3/5 of a foot long. So now here is your expression. You're going to work on this with your keep, switch, flip, keep, change, flip strategy. And when you're done, then you can work on group work. Good luck, guys.